Good afternoon, everyone. You are all very welcome to our 5th Cybersecurity Webinar that will focus on analyzing and preventing attacks using the MITRE ATT&CK framework. My name is Geraldine Mugumia. I'm a risk analyst at NITRE. This webinar is organized by the Uganda National Computer Emergency Response Team Coordination Center that is the focal point for incident handling at both national and international level. This is part of the SAT activities in order to share best practices on relevant issues in cybersecurity. Just a few rules of engagement for the participants. As the session progresses, use the Q&A option at the bottom of your screen to send in your questions. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our moderator for this session, Cybersecurity ATT&CK. Farida is an IT audit, risk, and cybersecurity professional with over 10 years experience in multiple sectors. She's currently a manager IT audit at KCB Bank and is responsible for evaluating and monitoring the bank's IT installations and systems. Prior to that, she was a manager technology risk at EY, where she led multiple IT audit, risk, and cybersecurity engagements. She holds an MBA and has CISA. With that, I'd like to invite you, Farida. Over to you.
Thank you, Geraldine, for the brief introduction. Apologies for my video. I think my network may not be able to support it, but I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Let me take the privilege of introducing our presenter today, who is Andrew Kapere, colleague in the field, over 10 years experience in cybersecurity and risk assessments and audits, and transformational projects. He's a CISA, he's a CISM, he's a CISSP, and has worked with EY as a cybersecurity manager. He has worked with KPMG as a cybersecurity manager, and is currently working for Deposit Protection Fund. Without taking too much time, let me hand over to Andrew to begin the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Farida. Thank you, Geraldine, for that introduction. Without taking much time, let me dive direct into our presentation or our topic of focus today, which is analyzing and preventing attacks using MITRE ATT&CK, the MITRE ATT&CK framework. Probably to confirm, is everybody seeing my screen? Just to confirm.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So to proceed, our brief agenda for today's presentation, we are going to go through a brief introduction of the frameworks and MITRE ATT&CK. Then we shall dive into the body of our discussion, that's the MITRE ATT&CK framework and its use cases. We shall have conclusions and a discussion, probably where people will share about their experience, their expectations, and if they have any questions, which we shall ask. This is a brief disclaimer. Most of this is from personal research and experience. So basically it doesn't represent my employers. We are going to find some brief terms and terminologies. Most of them might be defined or explained by me. But when you come across any, please, you can just highlight or you can just put in a comment. We can broaden on it such that we don't leave anyone behind on these issues. Directly into the introduction, usually what happens is in the cyberspace, we are living in an ecosystem whereby we're having a lot of technology advancements. So where there is technology, there is also adversaries who are trying as much as possible to compromise our technologies. So what happens is we are in a cat and mouse chase between good people and bad people. That's why we have bodies that are coming up with ways of how we can improve our security postures in order to in order to fight, or in order to be able to be ready to defend ourselves against these adversaries who are working to attack our systems. So we have things like tools, that security tools like SIM tools. We have antiviruses. Then on top of that, we have people who are coming up with frameworks, which is like a body of knowledge to guide security professionals into coming up with better better ways of how they can detect, they can analyze, they can defend themselves through these cyber attacks. So it's kind of a board of knowledge where people share openly what's happening within their environments, what's happening within the cyberspace, within a given platform, within the world, such that what has happened to someone doesn't, the adversaries don't use that same tactics to compromise other people because they don't know about that attack. So any successful attack, any research that is done within that is usually put out there to the public, such that people use these frameworks or these platforms to improve their postures before they materialize within their environment. So you find that a framework is just a platform that provides a foundation for developing systems. They can be security systems. It's an umbrella term for developing or improving something, but you are learning from somewhere. We have examples of some frameworks within IT security. We have the WASP 10, we have the Cyber Kill Chain, which was developed by the Lockheed Martin. We have the NIST Cybersecurity Framework, and our focus point, which is MITRE ATT&CK framework. So we have multiple frameworks that are coming up to help us give us hints of what has happened somewhere, such that we can copy. We can use that knowledge base to improve our postures within our environment, such that we don't wait for such to materialize. So a brief introduction why we usually need to incline or to do more research or to go into these frameworks to improve ourselves. We need to know our environments, first of all. We need to know who are our adversaries, which people are trying to compromise our environment. We need to know how to defend against the tactics that are being used by these people to improve our security postures. We need to develop threat intelligence in order to defend ourselves. Some of the research shows that 33% of organizations, this is research that's published in reports, in cybersecurity reports, says that 33% of organizations are unlikely it is unlikely that they would be able to detect a sophisticated attack. So, you know that if this attack has been probably has been detected by someone else and they have published this, we shouldn't wait for it to be in our environment. We should use that knowledge base in order to improve our environment, such that we can detect. We can have indicators of detecting if it's within our environment. Why we need that to be in that body of ecosystem. You'll find that over 350,000 malicious programs or unwanted applications are being developed or registered every day. So our adversaries are not sitting down. They are coming up with new avenues of exploiting our environment. So this is a continuous cat and mouse chase, such that we are not supposed also to just sit down and wait. We are supposed to keep on improving our environment, our systems, and everything. So also research shows that on average, it takes around 6 months to identify a breach, and over 2 months to contain it. So you find that if an institution is compromised, if your environment is compromised, the time it will take for you to investigate that incident, to clean it up, in order to make sure that there's no loophole that is left into your environment, it will take you an average of 2 months. Then it will take you an average of 6 months to detect a sophisticated attack within your environment. So we have to be proactive into doing cyber intelligence within our environment, such that we are on top of our game. So some research also, this is the same. The graph just showing vulnerabilities discovered by year. You find that from 2011 to 2021, it's on an increasing curve. For example, in 2011, we had new vulnerabilities, CVEs, around 7,380. And by 2021, it had doubled in number. And you see the curve is linear in nature. So what in security, we believe that every contact leaves a trace. So when these malicious people are within our network, they are interacting with our network, probably they are being logged, they are being captured in our security logs. You will find that there is something that they leave behind that can help us identify our trace. And these traces, what they leave behind, we call them indicators of compromise. So these ones usually differ in their advantages. You might find that it can be used to detect, or it is not necessary. So indicators of compromise give us valuable information about what happened. It prepares people who defend the network for future attacks. You will find that like in the MITRE ATT&CK, when you use it, it helps defenders to prepare for future attacks and helps prevent, detect, and respond to similar attacks. So with these frameworks and body of knowledge being published publicly for everyone to access, you don't always need to wait for an attack to materialize in your environment to do something about it. So you can proactively use what other people have gone through to improve your security posture before it comes into maturity in your environment. So the MITRE ATT&CK framework allows us to understand the adversary behavior by revealing what are their motives. So you'll find that this framework helps us understand like what successful adversaries, what were their motives, which countries and sectors do they target. So you might find that they might materialize maybe from China, from any country that it will show that which techniques do they use to compromise and what tools do they use. So if you filter down the motivation, you filter down the technique, the tool, the sector into your environment, you'll find that you will use that body of knowledge to improve your posture before you are being targeted by these adversaries. So in order to really better understand the security, the level of importance of cyber information, people came up, David Bianco came up with what we call a pyramid of pain. I think it was in 2013. So he categorized indicators in terms of their classification. So you find that the hash values, they are easy to detect. They are simple. The hash values, they are trivial. You find that IP addresses, if you are detecting, for example, if you are monitoring malicious activities using hash values, these ones are easy to detect. They are easy to also change by malicious people. So for example, if you have, if a malicious person, if you are detecting a malicious person by their IP addresses, by their hash values, or by their domain names, you find that they can easily replace those ones and compromise your system again, because you won't now, if they change the domain name, if they change the IP address, you won't be able to detect. So you'll find that most of security teams are using atomic indicators like domain names, hash values, and IP addresses. And what MITRE ATT&CK focuses at is the adversary techniques, tactics, techniques, and the procedures. So they are focusing at the top end of the pyramid. We are now, it gives you the knowledge of what tactics do these adversaries use, what are the techniques they use, and what are the procedures. So you find that the more you climb on the pyramid, the more harder it is for the defenders, the more harder it is for the adversaries to also change their attack vector. For example, if the adversary is using a technique, they have developed an application, a malicious application, which has a technique of password, a technique of privilege escalation. So to change that technique, they will have to go through another series of programming, another series of changing that code. However, if you are detecting at the lower level of hash values, what they need is just to change the hash value, then they run the same program. But when they are doing it at the tactics and the techniques and procedure level, that means they have to change the whole code flow or the whole pseudocode. So it becomes harder for them to always be changing and expensive for always to be changing their codes at this level. So if defenders are operating at that level of tactics, techniques, and procedures, it says when you detect and respond at this level, you're operating directly on the adversary behavior. So you will be at the top chain of detecting and of detecting and not being targeted by by malicious people using the same tactics and techniques. So once you block one tactics and one technique, that means you are on an advantage, because if the malicious person is retargeting you, they will have to go again and reprogram and redesign that technique in order to come and compromise you. And you will find that the CVEs like that have been developed, maybe you have blocked that one and they need to just go into reverse engineering the same application which had a loophole, and maybe that becomes expensive for the malicious people. The advantages of the MITRE ATT&CK, it can be used for academic. It's used actually for academic purposes. It's an independent body. It's non-partisan. It has open evaluation, community-driven. This is if you as an individual also find a new tactic or a new technique that's being used by by adversaries, you can go within the MITRE framework and update on this. So you'll find that this framework is being community driven. It's changing every day based on the new discoveries within the TTPs. I'll be referring to them as TTPs. It's a mid-level cyber adversary model describing tactics, techniques, and procedures. ATT&CK stands for adversaries, adversarial tactics, techniques, and common knowledge. So most of people, maybe you have come across ATT&CK. This is what it means. So ATT&CK is a real-world TTP knowledge base. This one we have discussed. Advisory technical behavior and advisory tactics for accomplishing the techniques for accomplishing the tactics. So the whole framework is designed to emulate advisories. So publicly available behavioral-based description of attackers' techniques. So what it does is, if they discover a technique that is being used by a malicious person, they just, as a public-driven initiative, you just go and update that tactic for everyone to access and improve their posture. So you'll find that that's the limitation they have. Attack framework includes only observed or known adversary behavior. So it cannot be expected to consist of every adversary behavior. So you find that new behaviors are being adversaries are coming up with new behaviors. So you don't go there expecting that it will protect you on things that are not discovered or that are not known. So once you know something, a behavior, and you update it, then the whole world can use it to improve their posture. So it aids assessment engineering, behavioral analysis, development, defensive gap assessment, and SOC maturity testing. SOC stands for Security Operating or Operation Centers. Why attack matters? It's a knowledge base for stakeholders, that's defenders and vendors. Attack helps us understand who our typical adversaries are and how they attack us. It helps us gain insight into adversary game plan in terms of combination of tactics, techniques, and tools like softwares they use. It helps us proactively design defenses to blunt adversaries. So if you find any gaps, if you use it, it will help you find gaps within your environment. It helps us clearly communicate the exact nature of the threat with greater insight. So you'll find that the way it's designed, it has how you can detect, how you can mitigate. It has the possible indicators of compromise that can be used, that you can use to detect a specific tactic used by the adversaries. So you can use that knowledge and insight to improve, to know the exact nature, and also improve your detection mechanisms. Attack also helps us apply intelligence to cyber security operations. So the indicators, the mitigations, all those ones just help us. So this one we can use it for education purposes. When you attack can be used to know which tool you have or need to help mitigate or and defend. So when you map attack frameworks, attack framework like the tactics within your environment, it will help you identify the gaps. It will help you detect which threat group, maybe which malicious people are trying to target your industry. What are the tools you can leverage on, maybe to improve your posture. So usually there are 4 areas that are useful in attack. We can use it in threat intelligence. We can use it in detection and analysis. We can use it in advisory emulation and assessment and engineering, as we are going to see in detail in the slides below. So these are the use cases for the MITRE attack. Usually we categorize, MITRE team has determined 3 different maturity levels and made recommendations for these levels. So you have levels where level 1 is teams with limited resources. So what is they categorize their maturity, they categorize into maturity levels to help teams at all levels. If you have limited resources, you can still make use of the MITRE resource to improve the MITRE attack, to improve your environment. If you have mid-level team, you can use it also to improve your environment in threat intelligence. If you have advanced cybersecurity team with SOC, you can also improve. So for threat intelligence, if you have limited resources, you can kickstart with threat groups, which target your industry. With mid-level, you can start mapping intelligence to attack yourself, as we are going to see in the slides below. Then with advanced tool, that's when you now include incident response, data reports from open source intelligence, or threat intel subscription. So for level 1, because our topic is how to use the MITRE attack. So from level 1, you can start, if you have limited resources, you can start with a single threat group, probably that target your organization, industry, or region. So when you go to the MITRE attack website, you can probably search about Africa, you can search about telecommunication, you can search about specific government entity that you are in. Maybe you are in technology, maybe you are in oil and gas. You search about that specific one, then it will give you, it will filter for you out attack groups which are international, which are around, which are in the world, that are trying to, that have been discovered to compromise people within your region, your industry, your organization, or your region. So when you zero down on those ones, then you can find more information that's associated with that group. Maybe what are the techniques they use, what is the software they use, in order to what are the success stories people have used in order to come and help mitigate your environment. So it helps you, give you the groups, the targeted geographies, and the targeted sector. What are their motivations? What is about those groups? So if you have limited resources, you can start with that, and you get the intelligence of what are the possible actors who can compromise your environment. What are their techniques they use? What are the softwares they use? What is the intelligence out there that can help you improve on your environment? So if you are at level 2 the maturity of the, you have mid-level resources, you can start mapping the intelligence to attack. So what happens is you can go into your SOC report, and you start now getting, you start digesting what your SOC is detecting and mapping it onto the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So this is an example of a SOC report whereby you can you have a SOC report talking about what was what was the intention, the CVE that was used, what commands did the adversary type. So once you have this information, what port, what is the protocol that probably they are using, things like this, when you start mapping them onto attack, you dive deeper into the intelligence of what these malicious people are trying to do. So you find things like, for example, exploit T1068, exploit of privilege. So you find that your SIM has detected a privilege escalation exploit. So when you map it on attack, you'll go and dig deeper into what are the tactics that are being used by people who are trying to exploit privilege. What are the techniques they are using? What are the groups that are associated with these techniques? And from there, you can find the mitigation, how to mitigate, how to detect and improve on your SIM tool. So usually on level 2, you try to understand attack. You familiarize yourself with the overall structure of attack. You find the behavior. Usually the behavior is like IP addresses, research on the behavior. If you're not familiar with the behavior, you may need to do more research. You translate the behavior into a tactic. Maybe the tactic can be information gathering. So you figure out what technique, under information gathering, what technique is being used by the adversary. Then you compare your results to other analysis. So you compare your results to other analysis and try to improve your security posture. So if you have advanced SOC, you have advanced cybersecurity, red teams, blue teams, you can now map more information on attack, and they use that information to prioritize your defense. So usually level 3 is where you have a full-fledged cyber information security section within your environment that has people who proactively do blue team and red team activities. So these ones, they emulate the adversaries as the blue team try to defend against those emulations, and you improve. So when you map on MITRE ATT&CK, the intelligence, you know the group, what are the attacks that are affecting your industry. So you now give it to the red team to try to emulate those ones, as the blue team is trying to detect those adversaries and also improve the posture. So you map both internal and external information to attack, including incident response, data, reports, intel subscription, and everything. So the second usage of MITRE ATT&CK is detection and analysis. Usually attack-based analysis involve collecting logs and event data about things happening in your systems and using that to identify the suspicious behavior described within the attack. So basically this one starts from your environment as you map it against the attack. So for level 1, that's with limited resource, you can look at the data source listed on each attack technique. So if you click on the MITRE ATT&CK framework, you find how to detect where you can where logs and events for a given tactics are captured. Probably they can be captured in the process and process command line monitoring, in file registry logs, authentication logs, packet capture logs. So that's where you look for analysis. When you collect that data using any tool, maybe you have a SIM tool, maybe you have some script that helps you, you analyze it against that. You look at the analytics created by others. You automate creating a ticket in your SOC each time the analytics fires, or adding it to the library. So it's a repetitive cycle. You go into MITRE, you look at the log the events, you look at the techniques that are being used, you specifically map it to your system, you go into analysis of those logs and probably expand it. Then level 2 is you expand the coverage by writing your own analytics, focus it on your own aspect. Once you understand how adversary use the techniques, you should figure out how to run it. So basically level 2 is now you go and look at your log. Then you start mapping it against MITRE ATT&CK in order to improve your posture. Level 3 is for now you work directly with the red team. So what happens is you have the red team that's emulating the malicious adversaries. Then you have the blue team that will respond and create analytics. So then you refine these analytics based on the attack techniques employed, and you repeat the process until every activity or every emulation that's being done by your red team is being detected by the blue team. That's when you now can move on to another technique. Basically, we have talked about this adversary emulation. This is red team engagement that mimics a known threat to an organization by blending in threat intelligence to define what actions and behaviors the red team uses. So adversary emulators construct a scenario. So you come up with a scenario, you test certain aspects of the adversary tactics, techniques, and procedure. For example, if you come up with a scenario of if you come up with a scenario of probably privilege escalation within your environment, let me give an example. Password dumping. If you come up with that scenario, so what happens is the red team now create tactics and techniques of how they can compromise your environment to dump given passwords. So then you have the blue team that's analyzing their activities and probably recording it to improve your posture. So for level 1, that's with limited resource, you test your defenses with techniques that align with attack. There are atomic red teams. There are libraries actually that are on the cloud, like atomic red team that you can take advantage of to map the MITRE ATT&CK framework against your organization if you don't have a red team within your organization. For level 2, you have the red team that maps technique used in engagements to attack. Then you have the blue team that maps analytics, detection, and controls back to attack. So you have the red team that's trying to emulate adversaries. They are trying to compromise your system using a tactic that's described within the MITRE. Then you have the blue team that's doing the analytics. So at the end of it, both teams will converge to identify common language about the activity and filter out identified gaps. Then you repeat. So that's the cycle. Then for level 3, where you have a collaboration within your organization, you have the cyber threat intelligence team to tailor the engagements towards specific advisory. You create your own advisory emulation plan. So here you have now a fully-fledged team that involves the cyber penetration testers, the red team, the blue team. So the cyber threat intelligence team is there to tailor that engagement based on that. But when you map it again, when you go and map it against attack, it helps you improve your environment. Then the last section is we can use MITRE to assess and engineering in assessments, in carrying out assessments and engineering, assess how defenses currently stack upon a technique and adversaries, identify the highest priority gaps in your current coverage, you modify your defenses. Basically, actually, what happens is when like audit teams, you have penetration testing teams, you can have your work plans, like your cybersecurity work plans mapped against the MITRE ATT&CK, because the MITRE ATT&CK goes into details of giving you advisory detection mechanisms. It gives you the softwares that were used by the malicious people. It gives you the mitigation. So if you map your plan of your assessment plans against the MITRE ATT&CK framework, it will help you produce probably a report that is real life, that will apply within your environment, within your sector, within your risk group. So for level 1, if you have limited resource, you can select a single technique to focus on. Maybe you can focus on privilege escalation. You determine your coverage for that technique such that you don't overblow, because what you find that most of the techniques can cut across different tactics. You'll find that if someone is trying to do command and control, they can have under that command and control privilege escalation. The same thing they can do when they are having privilege, when they are doing when they are dumping passwords, they can have the same section. So you find that you select a single technique, you focus on a technique, you determine your coverage for that technique, and make the appropriate engineering enhancements to start detecting. So you map it against yours. Then the second level is when you have the mid-level resources. You have some limited resources within the cyberspace. You expand your analysis to span reasonable large subset of the attack matrix. So you use a more advanced coverage scheme to now account for fidelities of detection. So you add detection within your environment. Then the last one is you now add the mitigation. So it's an assessment. You map your plan and add mitigations, and you go through each of your SOC policies, preventive tools, and security controls, and you map them to attack techniques that impact within your environment. So when you go onto the MITRE ATT&CK, you find it's mapped out like this. This is a snapshot of a MITRE ATT&CK framework where we have the different tactics. The tactics are the ones which are horizontal. The tactical objectives. Then vertically, we have the techniques for achieving the objectives. So you might find that, for example, the enterprise framework, we have 14 tactics. One of them is reconnaissance. We have resource development, initial access, execution, and the number. Then under each tactics, we have the respective techniques that are being used by the adversaries to compromise our systems. So you find that once you now start mapping your attack onto this, you now focus more onto your organizations. So when we go to the MITRE ATT&CK, if I don't know whether we'll have time, but if we find time, we shall go and just browse through the website. You'll find that they have frameworks they have matrices, attack matrices for enterprise, they have for mobile, and they have for industrial controls. So it's not a static. The framework expands as new techniques and tactics are being observed. So we have discussed this. Each column represents the tactics, and the vertical ones represents the technical goals used by adversaries. So the attack framework is not meant to be read in a linear fashion. So you have to map. You can't read it from end to end. It has a lot of information. So what you have to do is to map it against your environment. The adversaries do not have to progress through the tactics from left to right. So you will find also people who are compromising your environment are not following it in a linear format. So you find that adversaries do not have to employ all the tactics, so they just need simple tactics in order to compromise or achieve their goal. So you find that the matrices under enterprise, we have Windows, we have for Windows, Linux, and cloud. This is a snapshot. Then for mobile, we have for iOS and Android. Then we don't have anything under the industrial matrices. So in the attack framework, you'll find that we have tactics that can be that are used by this is the umbrella. Then we have the techniques that are used by the adversaries. So techniques are used to accomplish a tactic, and you find that you use the software to implement a technique, and you have the threat groups that uses these techniques and the softwares on also to compromise you. So you find under the technique, it will have metadata, it will have procedure examples, it will have ways to mitigate an attack, a given technique, and ways to detect it. So if you are using the MITRE ATT&CK framework, basically everything is centered and focused on the technique that's being used by the adversaries to compromise your environment. So you'll find this is a snapshot of the definitions of the MITRE ATT&CK enterprise and the different tactics that are being used and their goals. So we have the reconnaissance, resource development, initial access, as we shall see if we have more time to just scan through. So we have the mitigation. They give you a snapshot of how you can mitigate a given technique, how you can detect it, the groups that are using that techniques, which softwares they are using, the malwares and the tools to compromise you. So in conclusion, I wanted to just give you a snippet of the MITRE ATT&CK. Usually their domain is the attack.mitre.org. And what you're looking at is the screen for the enterprise. So you'll find that this horizontal represents the tactics used, and the vertically or under each tactics, there are the different techniques that are being used by the malicious people, the adversaries. So you find that when you go to tactics, you find under it we have the enterprise, the mobile, and the industrial. So if you are zeroing down on a given tactic, for example, phishing, when you click on phishing, it will give you a description and sub techniques that are being used by malicious people. It give you procedural examples. Under that procedure example, to give you ways of how to mitigate. That's you can employ antiviruses, intrusion detections. You can ways of how to detect phishing. Those application logs. So when you are using them attack, you use it best. You map it against your environment. For example, if we go to if you go back to enterprise, for example, we can go you can scroll horizontally. It has more. So when you scroll horizontally, it will show you more tactics that can be employed by these malicious people, and you zero down on it. I want to know whether I'm still in time on this. Yes. Farida and Geraldine.
Yes, Andre. Yeah, you're still on time. It's okay.
Okay. So what how to operationalize the MITRE ATT&CK framework? You can use it for threat intelligence, as we have seen. You can use it in collaboration of red teams. The red teams can use it for advisory emulation and security validation. For people to know red teams, usually in cybersecurity, we have teams, we team up. So what we have is usually what we call red teams. These are teams that emulate cyber attacks within our environment. So if you have an organization that's fully grown into cybersecurity, you'll have a red team, people who focus on emulating cyber attacks. Then you have the blue team, people who focus on preventing and detecting activities that are being done by the red team. So you have people who are attacking your systems to improve their posture. Then you have people who are trying to detect the activities that are being done by the red team in order to improve. So this collaboration between the red team and the blue team is what helps detect the gaps or the areas of improvement that we need within our environment. So when you map these activities, the activities that are being done by the red teams and the blue teams, when you map them against the MITRE ATT&CK, they help. It helps you give you real life examples of what is really happening within your industry, within your sector, because we usually call it not reinventing the wheel. If something has been done or if something has been detected by someone else, you don't need to go through the same experience in order to learn. So what the use of this framework is to use other people's experience to improve our security postures. So we apply it on our environment in order to improve it before adversaries attack us. So purple teams use MITRE ATT&CK as assessments and mitigation. So you find that in Blend there is a purple team that use it for assessments and mitigations. So this is a quote, this is a comment: to operationalize MITRE ATT&CK, you need a strong cooperation between these teams. So if the red team is emulating cyber attacks and there's no cooperation between the red team and the blue team, you will not get gaps. So the collaboration has to be there. When the red teams are carrying out their emulations, the blue teams have to be onboarded in order to try as much as possible to detect what is really happening within the environment. If they find it, they improve the tools. Probably they can capture the signatures of what they are trying to do. Then they tell the red team to repeat the same process in order to iron out anything that's being left behind. So basically, that's the use of the MITRE ATT&CK in a nutshell. If you want more information about it, you can go onto the MITRE ATT&CK website. They publish, actually, they carry out a lot of seminars, they carry out a lot of activities. They encourage people to come and participate in the knowledge base. You'll find a lot of information that can help you understand the framework in more details. Then if you use the framework, you can actually map it against your tools, the security postures you have in the antiviruses. You find that most of antivirus providers, SIM providers, firewall providers are all subscribing to this framework, and they have reports on what they can detect. So if you use this framework, it can help you and know the gap of the security tool you are using. Maybe it will help you also understand which other tools you use hand in hand in order to mitigate the risks within your environment to acceptable levels. So that's in a nutshell. That's the MITRE ATT&CK framework. The floor is open for any discussion, comments, any suggestion, or anyone who wants to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew, for that elaborate presentation. We have some questions coming through, so let me just read them to you. So Michael is asking, what strategies would an organization take to utilize the framework while automating all the processes you have presented on moving from level 1 to 3 to enhance mean time to detection of known and unknown threats? So basically,
okay.
what kind of strategies would an organization use in order to automate some of these processes so that they can move the different levels?
Okay. Usually the levels that I've discussed, maturity levels within the personnel. However, the personnel, for example, level 1 is when the organization has limited resource. You might find that they have one security analyst, or maybe they have an IT person or an IT personnel, but they don't have the security people within the organization. They can take use of the same framework. For example, you can zero down on your technology or on your industry or on your geography. So you can zero down probably to your geography, you can zero down to your industry, you can zero down to an attack group, probably focusing on your sector. So when you use the MITRE ATT&CK framework at a limited resource level, you can now read more about that industry, that knowledge that you have gathered. So you go into the MITRE ATT&CK, you filter out techniques that apply to your environment. Then you read more about those techniques. So those techniques usually will give you insights of how to improve your security posture. You will find that most of actually the mitigations that you need to fine tune within your environment are things that you can do using your available technology implementations. You find that maybe you need to activate your logging, maybe you need to fine tune your SIM tool to pick a certain activities that probably it's not picking. Maybe you need to define policies, access control policies. There are things that maybe you can fix fast, that these adversaries have used as techniques to compromise. What you find in cybersecurity is most of adversaries' goal is to compromise access control. So we compromise usually misconfigurations, access control, whereby if you find that someone was successful in privilege escalation, you find that maybe they were successful because they found administrators. They found a file that is saved on a user computer which contained the admin usernames and passwords. So if attack has listed down ways of how to mitigate a given attack technique that applies to your environment, you just go and map those techniques based on your current security investments and try as much as possible to close things that you can close, to define the policies, to define the technology, fine-tune your technologies, and in order to mitigate. So that's the level one, where you have limited resources. You can go into that. So as you advance into mid-level, where you have some blend within your information security division, and the level 3, where you have the full-fledged SOC, you have the full-fledged blue team and red team, that's when you can now use the MITRE ATT&CK to emulate cyber attacks. So what happens here now is you have people who are knowledgeable about carrying out attack and penetration testing compromises at the offensive side and at the defending side. So what happens is now you have a team that emulates cyber attacks, and you have a team that's trying to really look into activities on your network to detect what activities usually indicate compromise. So you have those teams working hand in hand to improve your security posture. So if the defenders detect an activity, they go into the already existing tools like antiviruses. You can feed signatures of certain activities into your antivirus, into your SIM tool to pick it up. You can come up with threat hunting scripts in order to detect that. Then you dive into it's a complete cycle. So the levels depend on the maturity of your department, of your cybersecurity team within your organization. But at all levels, you can leverage on the MITRE ATT&CK framework to improve your security posture, because it's really it's rich in knowledge of things that you can do at the individual level, at the mid level 1, when limited resource level, and at advanced team levels. Thank you. Yes, Farida.
Thank you, Andrew. I hope that was clear to you, Michael. So our next question came in from Timothy. What are some of the challenges in using the attack framework? How can I make sure that my first experience isn't daunting?
Yes. Actually, the MITRE ATT&CK is an open framework. It's the whole body of security, cybersecurity, information security contribute to it. So you find that maybe the challenges will be to navigate. Let me, if I get him correct, to navigate through. But a lot of research presentations, a lot of people are digesting this framework, and they are coming up with better ways of how you can begin from the introduction, how you can introduce yourself into this framework. What I can advise Timothy is these frameworks are rich in knowledge, and you can get excited when you start browsing on them. However, the best way to approach or to attack a framework is to filter out, to start on something, one unique tactic that you know that is relevant to your environment. It can be access privilege escalation, it can be data exfiltration. You might find that the tactic that that is more risky to your environment is people probably sending data, confidential data, outside of your organization. So what happens is you start with that, then you go into the tactics that might be used by people in order to send information to exfiltrate data from your environment. So you zero down to a given tactic. When you browse it down, you find a lot of information that will help you mitigate that tactic in order to defend against it. So you really start small and you start filtering out based on what applies to your organization. Thank you. Farida?
Okay, our last question comes in from Raymond. Is it free or is it for a course?
Raymond, MITRE ATT&CK is free, is open source. It's available to everyone. So you just browse MITRE ATT&CK and you start using the resource. It's a knowledge. It's free, and you'll find that most of actually, because the aim of these frameworks is to help ourselves in order to in order to prepare ourselves on adversary tactics. So usually they are free. You can also contribute freely if you have any tactic that you know that's unique within your environment. Actually, you can go onto the MITRE ATT&CK framework, you capture it, and it's presented across the world for other people to also use it to improve their environment and posture. Thank you. Yes, Farida.
Thank you, Andrew, for that. I think that was our last question. I think, yeah, that was the last question. So probably in terms of closing remarks, I think this is a good framework to pick up on, especially as it's free. And we see that in our environments, many of us struggle to convince management in terms of putting in money or funding some of these things. So if you find something that's already open source and it's free, go ahead and try it out. And then maybe at that point when they see the benefit, you can try the other frameworks that may not be as free. But also the fact that it's updated by anybody means that really you get a lot of content from it. Also, just to say that it's good to, it sort of gives you the thinking of how can I think like a thief, so to speak. In order to catch a thief, you need to be able to think like one. And this framework actually helps you with that, because you may be doing a lot in your organization in terms of security, but how sure are you that what you're doing or what tactics you're expecting is what is actually currently being used? So you always need to update yourself. So I would say, please go ahead and go through this framework, apply it as much as possible to your organization, and just to make sure that your response is actually in line with the actual attack vectors that are out there. Other than that, over to you, Andrew, for your closing remarks.
Yes, thank you, Farida, for the summary. This framework and other frameworks are actually good in order to improve our security posture. Since adversaries are not resting, as cybersecurity, as information security personnel, we shouldn't also rest. We should be proactive in our environment in terms of testing any tactics that are coming up in order to improve our security postures, such that we are not caught off guard by any of their techniques or tactics. Thank you for everything, for listening. Back to you, Farida and Geraldine. Cheers.
Okay. Thank you very much for that wonderful, informative presentation. With that, we come to the close of our 5th webinar. And on behalf of MITRE, I want to say, on behalf of MITRE and the National SAT Coordination Center, I want to say thank you so much to Andrew for sharing your knowledge on this important topic, and also for your responses to the questions that have been raised by the participants. Thank you to Farida for wonderfully moderating this session, and to the participants for taking time out of your busy schedules to attend and gain some knowledge around cybersecurity. We'll be having our final webinar, which will take place next Thursday at 2 p.m. And this will focus on incident response and cyber hygiene for IT and systems admins. So if you know anyone who wants to get into this field or wants to understand more about incident response and cyber hygiene, mostly for the technical teams, this will be a very great session for them. And this will be done by our very own SAT analysts. So please follow our social media pages to get more information about that session. Thank you so much to everyone, and have a blessed week.